I'm DMing. One player, we'll call him Marcus, was always doing things that kept the rest of the group groaning and cringing. In one session, the party was beset by a series of rather unfortunate rolls. They had been battling a large band of orcs with their backs against the cliff. One by one, they all started dropping, until only Mitch remained. Wishing to avoid a TPK, I whittled down the number of adversaries into something that ought to give Mitch even odds of surviving if he just straight out meleeed his way through the combat. If he could have come up with something clever, I was totally also willing to see him prevail by fiat. His solution was to run for the cliff and hurl himself over the precipice. Everybody, myself included, just staring at him, wide-eyed and jaw agape. What are you doing? I asked, blinking my way through my amazement. Oh, I read in some book, and the hero just threw himself off the cliff, and he was borne aloft by the winds of true love. You don't have a love interest. But it was in the book! I never read the book. Everybody make up new characters. You know, I've seen TPKs. I've seen plenty of TPKs. TPKs by belief in true love wind? Yeah, that's new. That's definitely new. Context. I'm the DM for a 5th edition campaign that has been running for 2 years now. We have a cleric, monk, and wizard. The wizard is the problem player. Monk is my best friend and was dating wizard for about 4 years at that point. I never much liked wizard. She was generally rude to me and everyone else I knew, but I decided to include her for the sake of appeasement. Big mistake on my part. I consider wizard to be the problem player of the party because of a few reasons. She constantly questioned my decisions as a dungeon master and claimed things like, it would make more sense if X happened, instead of how you're choosing to run the story. She also constantly questioned my rulings on rules, such as repeatedly claiming that a tie should go to the defender in terms of armor class versus hit roll, when it actually is the complete opposite rules as written, and more importantly, how I run things. How you run things? I mean, isn't meets to beats sort of like a thing in TTRPGs? Or am I dumb? Please tell me I'm not dumb. I eventually just bookmarked the page in the DMG and just showed it to her every time she said that. She also got irritated very easily if things didn't go her way for her character or the party, such as when they encountered any sort of dilemma or challenge. Oftentimes, she'd simply check out and stop playing if she got too irritated. She never showed up on time for sessions despite us agreeing on a time and place weeks in advance. In the previous session, the party had faced off against a large force of enemies from an evil organization they had been tangling with for a while. The forces had attacked the party's hometown, which was a big moment, since previously they had only tangled with them out in the wild. The party took a prisoner, who just so happened to be the monk's in-game ex-girlfriend, who the monk still had feelings for. The party decided the best place to store the prisoner was in the town jail. The party then met up with the captain of the city watch to discuss a potential defense plan against future attacks, should they occur. The party and the captain both agreed to a coalition between the town watch and the mercenary guild the party worked for so they could help things out. However, the captain stated that given that the prisoner they took as part of that evil organization, he stated he would not allow the prisoner to be stored in the town jail for more than a day since she poses a security risk to the entire town should the evil organization decide to try and extract her. Our heroes would either have to execute her or find somewhere else to keep her. Throughout the session, Wizard had been progressively getting more and more irritated. One particularly telling moment was that Monk had cooked lunch for our dear Wizard, but Wizard took a few bites and then rudely stated it was dry and over-seasoned. But anyway, apparently this was the final straw for her. She began to raise her voice at me and eventually just started yelling at me. She claimed that my story did not make any sense, because given the guard captain wanted to form an alliance with the guild, he should be on the party side about everything. I replied that just because he wanted to be allies doesn't mean he'll blindly accept everything the party wants, and that his primary goal is the safety of the town. She claimed I was just arbitrarily putting up an insurmountable wall in front of the party since there was no obvious solution to the problem of storing the prisoner. The cleric, who, by the way, is a total sweetheart but knows when and how to stand up to people, replied that that's not how life works. Normally, I wouldn't let players see behind the curtain, but perhaps to calm Wizard down, I told her that there was a lead on a potential solution literally around the corner, which was true. I did have that planned. And if she had been patient for 5 minutes, the party would have received said lead. However, this was not good enough for her, and she simply said,
Screw this game. This is ridiculous. I quit. Play without me.
She then left the table and sat down on the couch, staring daggers at all of us. However, given that there were only 2 other players in the campaign, I decided that wasn't really an option, and I called the session quits there. I packed up and left. I DM at Monk's place. Later, I come to find out that this was enough for Monk to go on break from dating Wizard. They had been having issues for a while now, and apparently this was the final straw. This break was finalized as a full breakup. Wizard has since been booted out of the campaign, good riddance, and we've since replaced her with a much nicer player who's playing a paladin. Well, it seems that the DM and the party handled this issue very handily. I missed once again that the 2 players were in a relationship. I think that this is becoming a theme on this channel, but anyway, we're moving on. Point is that relationship or not, this is a problem at the table. Look, you're allowed to criticize your DM. Your DM is not perfect, and you're allowed to point out mistakes that they make. Often, the best DMs will ask for feedback and criticism, but there are ways to do it right and tactfully and ways to do it badly, and here we see a great example of the latter. Screaming at your DM at the table is not going to solve anything. It's more than likely just going to make your DM defensive, and frankly, they have a right to be, because no one likes getting screamed at, no matter how right you are. Oh, and also, I mean, come on, the level of impatience is just ridiculous. As a game master, we often present problems to the party. That's our job. We're not trying to ruin the game for you by giving you a problem to solve. This is actually an interesting problem for the party to figure out a solution to. But of course, yelling and screaming at the DM over it is, I mean, yeah, that's something else you could do, I guess. So this is more of a minor horror story, but I wanted to share it anyway. The DM had set up a campaign where the central conflict revolved around a demonic meteor that had crashed into the kingdom's coastline. The meteor had ripped open a tear in reality, through which huge numbers of chaotic, evil demons were pouring through. The party was mostly comprised of good aligned characters, gathered by a DMPC paladin. The paladin was mounting an expedition to the coast in order to set up a forward camp and best assess how to deal with a demonic threat. We met with the DMPC paladin at his monastery, where we proceeded to board a ship that would hopefully sneak quietly around the meteor crash site and find a safe place to land on the blighted coast. So we're on the boat. The party is composed of the paladin DMPC who gathered the party, me, an elf wizard who wants to study a way to close the demonic portals and prevent more suffering, a half-elven druid who wants to reverse the damage done by the demon to the fragile coastline ecosystems, a human ranger whose hometown was destroyed in the initial meteor crash, and a half-orc barbarian with a deep hatred of all things demonic because demons had corrupted her tribe. Basically, we're all the good guys. Or so I thought. So the DM is describing how the ocean is red and frothy with gore littered with bodies. The corpses are so thick that they're slowing down our boat. I roll perception to see if I notice anything unusual among the corpses. DM tells me that there is a sealed barrel floating upright in the bloody waters. Just as I spot the barrel, the lid opens and an emaciated survivor of the initial demonic attack pops out. My character shouts to the others to come look. I say that we need to throw him a rope and bring him on board. He's clearly in need of help and could probably provide us with some useful information on the demons. I'm flabbergasted when everyone else in the party immediately disagrees. They decide, with no, investigation, that this is obviously a demonic trap. The ranger aims an arrow at the survivor in the barrel and tells him to prove that he's human or else he's gonna die. Meanwhile, the DM is describing how this survivor is so sick and weak he can't even hold his head up. The ranger then immediately shoots the man and kills him. My character is horrified. I say to the ranger, what if he was a citizen of your hometown? To which the ranger just shrugs and says he was probably gonna die anyway. The druid says that the survivor was probably corrupted, and it was safer to just kill him, rather than bring him on the boat. The half-orc agrees. The DMPC paladin doesn't say a word, and we just continue on our journey. All these characters are supposed to be lawful or neutral good, but they just murdered an innocent and shrugged it off like it was no big deal. Not only an innocent, but that was obviously a plot hook NPC. The campaign was decently okay before it ended up collapsing due to scheduling issues, but it was full of moments like that, where the party of good guys immediately defaulted to murdering in every situation rather than trying to investigate or talk, which led us to missing a lot of plot threads and roleplay that the DM just told us about. Oh, and my character got stereotyped as a buzzkill for disapproving of murder. Man, Session 0 is important, but frankly, even with a Session 0, I'm sure this party wouldn't have really cared. I think they view their actions genuinely as good, aligned actions, and therefore are perfectly comfortable murdering to their heart's content, even though, realistically, it's a pretty dumb thing to do. We often think of murder hobos as being inconvenient for the DM, but often we don't think about the other players who want to roleplay, who want to interact with these characters, but are unfortunately stopped when those same characters are just killed off without any ceremony or anything at all, really. While I think that for most players, saying, this is a good aligned campaign will get the message across, sometimes you're going to encounter a special case. This is the special case. Me, the DM, and 2 other players were all in the Navy and on the same ship. We found out we were all into Dungeons & Dragons through a random conversation that came up, and we all got really excited and decided to start setting up a campaign. DM said we could have meetings at his house, and since I crashed on his couch occasionally, I already knew he had the space to accommodate us. DM said his wife would want to play, and one of our players said his wife would also like to play. That gave us 5 players and a DM. The ship was going to be deploying in 2 months, so the DM said we could give him our character sheets and backstories to approve before the first meeting. I told him that I'd always been a chaotic good bard or rogue and was interested in doing something very different, and had a concept put together for a lawful evil monk, and possibly doing some sort of redemption arc wherein the monk, through the power of friendship, eventually shifts to good. He said that sounded like a really cool idea and approved of it. The day of the first session arrived, and in the interest of time, we did the "you all meet in the tavern" hand wave for why we're all here. That's when the DM's wife, a lawful good paladin, says to the rest of the party, "The monk is evil. I can sense it. We cannot travel together with darkness among us. Join me in killing the evil hiding among our ranks." The rest of the party told her out of character that, like, absolutely not. We're not killing a character on our first meeting. That would mean she doesn't get to play and we'll all be behind because she has to make a whole new character sheet. Can't your paladin just, like, let this slide? That's when she did the crappy metagaming bomb thing on me. It's not just the paladin. I will not play with an evil character. DM tried to explain the alignment shift arc we had planned, but she was adamant that she wouldn't play with someone evil, pointing at me. I was super confused because, again, I crashed on this guy's couch a couple of weeks ago when I didn't feel like sleeping on the ship. His wife knew me, and we, like, got along. Her justification was, anyone who would play an evil character is clearly a bad person because how could you do evil actions in the game if you don't believe in them yourself? The rest of the party was still adamant that I hadn't caused any problems, and since the redemption arc had been spoiled, they knew I wasn't going to cause problems down the road. The problem was the DM's wife, and not even for a character/story/in-game reason. She just couldn't separate the player from the character, and that wasn't something any of us wanted in our game. When the party refused to kill my character, which I guess she thought would teach me a lesson about why playing an evil character is bad, she had her character fall upon her own sword. Which, that really killed the vibe. We tried to continue on with the adventure, but DM's wife was loudly scoffing and huffing in the background, and decided that the middle of our session was the best time to vacuum the living room, make herself a smoothie in the blender, etc. Just in general being very loud and disruptive. I'm sorry for laughing, it's just the notion of playing a Dungeons & Dragons game like, you all enter into the cavern of the mad mage Atriox, when suddenly... Hey, honey? Hey, can you... What are you doing? Why are you blending and at the set? Really? Come on. Like, that's some next level petty. DM said his wife wouldn't let him host anymore because she didn't want evil in her house. The only other people in housing had pets that the DM was severely allergic to, and the other player's wife didn't want to come onto the ship to play on the mess decks because she got seasick. The other player whose wife wanted to play dropped the group entirely because he really wanted to play with his wife. I also discharged from the Navy within a week of deployment due to some unexpected health issues, so I don't know if they ever managed to get a game going on the ship. In addition, I was not allowed to crash on his couch anymore as the DM's wife had banned me from their home entirely. While we maintained a friendship on the ship, he did tell me that his wife had told him to stop speaking to me, period. I asked him if maybe she thought he and I were having an affair, and he assured me that was not the case at all. She just legitimately thought that having the desire to play an evil character made me an evil person. While I feel like Session 0 could have exposed the problem earlier and prevented me from even rolling an evil character to begin with, I still can't help but wonder if she would have reacted the same way for even thinking about playing an evil alignment. The moral of the story: don't skip Session 0 and understand that a player is not their character. While I'm adamant that it's impossible to entirely 100% separate a player from their character, after all, usually the player makes the character, in this case, yeah, the connection is dubious at best. We've read plenty of stories where players do extremely creepy things in character and try to justify it as, it's what my character would do, but frankly, the monk wasn't even doing anything at all. She was just existing. So what this paladin was getting upset about is, well, up to the interpreter. I actually still believe in the theory that she believed that there was some sort of affair, because I honestly don't have any other explanation for this behavior. I can't imagine someone actually believes playing an evil D&D character makes you evil, because for God's sakes, her husband is the DM. 50% of his job is probably playing evil characters. Honestly, maybe I'm the fool in this equation. Applying logic to idiots is just, well, it's never a good idea. Hey there, long-time lurker, first-time poster. I've been watching a lot of Crispy's Tavern, thanks by the way, and I thought it would be cathartic to post here myself. When I was 14, there was this older guy I knew from choir and just general socializing, who I'm gonna call Creep. I was talking to him via Instagram just casually. We were on a group chat for queer people from my school and other stuff together. Suddenly, out of the blue, he starts hitting on me in private DMs, telling me he thought I was cute, that would be fun to meet up over the summer, etc. Until it devolved into straight up propositioning me. Creep was like 17 or 18 at the time, and while for most people this would be a serious red flag, I was in a bad place emotionally at that time, so I was just glad for the attention. Eventually it devolved further when he started sending me photos and videos. Then he started to ask me to reciprocate, and I noped right out of the situation, and the next morning, Creep begged me to delete everything from the DMs, and I did. I assumed at the time that he was just making a stupid mistake and tried not to make a big deal out of it because he, like me, had autism, and I thought that he'd just been unable to pick up on me being uncomfortable. Dude, this is the first paragraph. Oh my god. When school started up, I was invited to play D&D, specifically Horde of the Dragon Queen. It was with a group of older kids, 17 to 18 age range, with me having just turned 15. I mostly knew them from the theater and whatnot. I was super excited, not only because I would get a chance to actually play D&D. My last campaign involved a guy who named his character Expedon 69, and a sequence where one guy had to roll to not get the mafia boss's daughter pregnant. It was a nightmare, actually, but also because I would get to hang out with older kids and be treated like an equal, like I had a seat at the grown-up table. I showed up at the Session 0 and knew most of the people there, including Creep. I, at that point, was trying to be cool and be treated on an equal footing as these older kids, so I didn't bring it up or even try to distance myself from him. You have to understand, I was trying so hard to be liked. I made a healer, Aelin Greenfield, a wood elven druid, and to this day, my favorite character concept. I offered to do art for everyone's characters. I brought snacks, too, something considerably difficult as we weren't allowed off-site during the school day. So there was practically no way I was going to jeopardize my chance of a real friendship with these guys over something I considered at the time to just be a misunderstanding. Creep, on the other hand, had no such qualms about being upsetting to the group. He played a wizard, and we didn't even get to the level where he would be able to cast Fireball, but I have a sneaking suspicion that he would have been the type to go, I cast Fireball, in an enclosed room. My evidence? We were fighting a monster, I can't remember which one exactly, but it was difficult enough to be the only enemy for a second level party. And our fighter and wild-shaped druid, we had two, including me, were in melee combat, with me pocket supporting them. Our wonderful Creep decided it would be a good idea to cast Burning Hands directly at the monster, with us in the line of fire. We were second level characters, bearing in mind, and 3d6 damage, well, it had each of us completely blindsided. The other druid was knocked out of wild shape. I was at 1 or 2 hit points, and our fighter had started to make death saving throws. Our sorcerer finished off the monster, and I stabilized the fighter, the one time when Spare the Dying came in handy. We started ribbing Creep about his spell choice out of character, but because the other players didn't seem too upset about it, I let it go at the time. Creep was also a little obsessed with my character. His wizard was always flirting with my character, something that I was quite uncomfortable with, especially since, though my elven druid was a century old, he was very much younger in demeanor and appearance than Creep's full-grown wizard. I pulled a classic blunder and tried to fix an out-game problem with an in-game solution, giving my character a long-lost lover he was very committed to, which of course did not deter Creep in the slightest and gave him every variation of, well, he's not here right now, you could possibly imagine. I think the DM or one of the other players must have noticed how uncomfortable I was and talked to him or something, because one session he just stopped flirting entirely. In-game, that is, but once again, I was a younger kid, desperately trying to fit in with the older crowd, and no way in hell was I going to confront him about it. Then the sessions had to move to Discord because of one certain pandemic. I say sessions plural, but we only managed to have one full party session because Creep seemed committed to never having free time for D&D. Not something I'm particularly faulting him for. I know scheduling is hard, I'm just griping. During this time, I noticed people getting more and more snappy with Creep in the party group chat, which I thought was due to his absence from sessions, but as it turns out, it was about something way worse. I don't blame you if you don't remember me mentioning the group chat for queer kids in our school, but apparently everyone was mad at him because he was sending inappropriate messages to a bunch of boys in the group chat my age or younger. I'm a trans woman, but at the time I didn't know that. As far as I know, he hadn't sent anyone else pictures, but then again, the other kids might not have been comfortable disclosing. The campaign, understandably, fizzled out as soon as I heard about this. No one kicked Creep off of any group chat, so for a while he would just send memes and random messages and everyone would just ignore him. I tried my best to forget about him. I blocked him on every social media site he was following me on, except Spotify, because I can't figure out how to do that on there. And luckily, I didn't have to see him in person, lockdown and whatnot, but ultimately, he ended up staying in town for uni, so occasionally I see him at a shop or something, and then I haul out of there as soon as physically possible. TLDR, creepy guy hits on me and sends inappropriate direct messages. I end up in a D&D group with him where he ends up being obnoxious and a boundary-crossing player. For the final act, I find out he's kind of a and proceed to just ignore him into oblivion. This just left the sphere of D&D horror and crossed into real-life horror, which we do every once in a while, and yeah, this situation is absolutely horrifying. And look, I'm not going to pretend I know all the answers of what to do in situations like this, because I don't. I just don't. However, I will say, if someone's doing something like this and contacting people in extremely inappropriate manners, you have a right to talk to someone about it. You don't need to fight all of your battles personally, and there are people out there who are willing to listen to you and help you. It's so easy to feel like you're alone or that no one's going to listen or pay attention, but I assure you, someone out there with authority will listen, will pay attention, and will help you. I mean, in terms of the D&D stuff, I mean, the inappropriate flirting is bad. But really, I mean, nothing you do in D&D could even come close to the level of crap this guy was pulling in real life. And that's a whole worse horror story all on its own. Alright, that's going to be it for today's episode of RPG Horror Stories. If you guys enjoyed, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then you can check out Tavern Adjacent, our tabletop podcast, where we talk about tabletop news and listen to your horror stories. It's linked in the cards. And while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment not that evil to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Farewell.